California, are you prepared to invoke the Insurrection Act?
Depends on whether or not there's an insurrection. No, but you have violent people, and we're not going to let them get away with it.
U.S. President Donald Trump has ordered 2,000 National Guard troops to Los Angeles, defying objections from California Governor Gavin Newsom. In response to intensifying protests over immigration raids, the decision follows a second day of violent clashes between protesters and federal immigration agents clad in riot gear. Demonstrators blocked freeways and set autonomous vehicles on fire, prompting law enforcement to use tear gas, rubber bullets, and flash bangs to disperse the crowds. Some police units patrolled on horseback, while Guard members, armed and shielded, were deployed to secure key federal sites, including the Metropolitan Detention Center, where immigrants arrested in recent sweeps were being held. Tensions escalated as hundreds of protesters chanted, "Shame," and "Go home" at the Guard, triggering another wave of smoke canisters and crowd control rounds from LAPD and federal forces. Protesters later moved to block the 101 freeway before being cleared by highway patrol officers by late afternoon. Governor Newsom fired back, calling the federal deployment a serious breach of state sovereignty in a letter to the president. He warned the Guard's presence was inflaming tensions rather than restoring calm. Mayor Karen Bass echoed the criticism, saying, "This isn't about public safety, this is about another agenda." Protests first broke out Friday in downtown LA, then spread to Latino-majority areas like Paramount and Compton. Demonstrators confronted federal agents attempting to stage operations near a Home Depot, throwing rocks and cement as agents responded with tear gas and flashbangs. More than 100 immigrants have been arrested in the past week. Among those detained was a prominent union leader accused of obstructing law enforcement. While these protests are significant, they remain smaller than past LA mobilizations that triggered Guard deployments, including the 1992 Rodney King riots and the 2020 George Floyd protests. This marks the first time since 1965 that the National Guard has been sent into a U.S. city without the state's request. Trump invoked legal authority for federal intervention, declaring the situation a threat of rebellion against the government. Late Saturday night, Trump tweeted praise for the National Guard's job well done, but Mayor Bass quickly countered, saying the troops had not yet arrived. The standoff continues, with streets tense and the political fallout far from over.
When you raid Home Depot and workplaces, when you tear parents and children apart, and when you run armored caravans through our streets, you cause fear and you cause panic. And deploying federalized troops is a dangerous escalation, but we need to be real about this. This is about another agenda. It's not about public safety. There's clearly no plan, and there is clearly no policy. I want the people of Los Angeles to know that we stand with all Angelenos, no matter where you were born. The First Amendment right gives you the ability, again, to protest peacefully, but it does not give you the right to be violent, to create chaos, or to vandalize property, and that will not be tolerated. So I call on all Angelenos to continue expressing your right, your anger, your outrage, but to do it peacefully. And I just have to say that all of you were there Friday. Everybody knows what happened Friday. A workplace, several workplaces were targeted and raids took place. Now, in the beginning, the administration said they were just looking for dangerous felons, violent people. It's hard to say that that's what they found at a workplace or in a Home Depot parking lot. When this happens, it terrifies people. It sends a sense of fear and chaos in our city. And you well remember a few years ago in the last administration that kids were afraid to go to school, parents were afraid to go to work. This impacts all of our city. You can't terrify the workforce, and then expect for people to get the jobs done. So if you think about a father that went into a factory and now his family doesn't know where he is, the detainees have not been allowed to speak to legal counsel. That is a marked departure from what has happened in the past. When you think of a mother that might be working in a household, taking care of children on another side of town, that impacts that family as well as her family. And so this is something that I think should not be happening in our city, and I join with the governor in appealing to the administration to rescind the order to federalize the National Guard and allow the National Guard to come back under the control of the governor. So with that, we can open it up for questions. Yes.
We're going to start with Lolita and then we'll go to Chip.
Mayor, these protests that were demonstrations, I should say, did start out peacefully. You've been here since
Right.
in the morning.
Right.
But then they scattered and people were moved
Right.
around. Where is the LAPD in terms of being here to be able to deal with that and maybe stop them before they go on the freeway?
Sure. Well, I think that basically they were overrun. But what is happening now is that the freeway is cleared. The California Highway Patrol, as you know, is in charge of the freeways. So they have moved all of the protesters back. They still might be there, but they are beginning to be dispersed. But LAPD is on the perimeter, so LAP is actively involved. You know that there were hundreds of protesters on the freeway and thousands of protesters off the freeway. So there is a joint collaboration going with the CHP, the LAPD, and then frankly the National Guard. But you also know that the National Guard is deployed to protect federal property. So there is a National Guard troops in Westwood at the federal building and also here downtown.
Next question to Chase.
Chase?
Mayor Bass, have you reached out directly to the federal government, or is this you doing so right now with the media here? Have you tried to reach out?
No, my disappointment is I've been talking to the federal government for days. I was hoping to prevent this situation from happening. I was trying to encourage the administration that if they deployed the National Guard in Los Angeles, it would create a sense of chaos. It's the last thing our city needs. Our city is still trying to recover from the wildfires. And you just think about how so many people were impacted by that. And that's an example of where the administration was helpful. And to go from that situation to where we are now is just really tragic. And I think it's so unfortunate. It's the last thing Los Angeles needs.
When you say you've reached out to the federal government, have you reached to President Trump?
No, I did not reach out to President Trump directly. I spoke to his chief of staff. I talked to Tom Holman. I talked to the U.S. Attorney. So I've talked to several members of the
Next
administration.
question, Matthew.
Yeah, I know you've been watching this protest. First off, what do you see when you're watching this? And I know that you've mentioned being worried about the safety of the protesters, but are you also worried about members of law enforcement in the middle of this?
Well, I'm worried about everybody. I'm worried about members of law enforcement. I'm worried about the safety of the people who are peacefully protesting. I'm worried about the businesses that might get vandalized. I'm worried about the vandalism that took place around the federal building. All of that. We do not need to see our city torn apart. And the idea that the federal government that should be assisting us is a contributing factor, I think is very tragic. When I see the protesters, I know that so many people are affected by this. Their families are affected by this. People are terrified.
How do you think that vandalism impacts the overall message of the protest?
Well, I mean, I first of all, I think protests need to be peaceful, period. And any time it deteriorates into violence, that is a problem, and it absolutely messes with the overall message.
Next question right here in white.
Yeah, hi Mayor. George with Warriors. My question is, can you share a little bit about the conversations you've had with the governor, and how long you expect for the National Guard to actually be in?
You know what? Thanks for asking me that, because we're hearing all of sorts of information. We're hearing that raids could continue. We're hearing that the National Guard is going to be here. So it's uncertain. But that's exactly the problem. Because we don't need in this city to go to sleep tonight and wake up in the morning and find out about people running through Home Depot parking lots being chased by ICE officers, or people going to work, or children at school. So we don't need any of that in our city right now. Our city's trying to heal. Our city is trying to rebuild. Our city does not need to be torn apart with a provocative measure from the federal government.